Coming up on Tech News today, do you want an Uber full of Cruffins? Maybe you want a sky full of tweeting pigeons. Or maybe you want a virtual room full of people talking to each other virtually. All that is coming up next on Tech News today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1470, recorded Tuesday, March 15th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost, automated investment service and the most sophisticated way to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/TNT and sign up to get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/TNT.
And by Score Big. Pay less for quality seats to your favorite sporting and music events. Go to scorebig.com, click on the microphone, and enter promo code TNT to save $20 off your first purchase.
And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace which connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/TNT to apply for a loan now.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about all the tech news with people who love technology.
All of it.
All of it. I am Megan Morrone.
And I am Jason Howell, not wearing my VR goggles right now because that would be weird.
Not yet, but we're going to talk a lot about VR and how excited and a little bit weird you are
and a
about
little creeped out by it. There's a couple of really interesting things in today's news. But before we get there, let's introduce into the show Nathan Olivarez-Giles. How's it going, sir?
Going great. Thanks for having me on.
It is always a pleasure to get you on. Of course, Wall Street Journal, WSJD.com. What have you been working on lately?
I'm actually working on a couple of things I can't tell you about just right now. But I guess the most recent thing, I actually wrote a story that took a look at the devices that are being used in the enterprise. It was a little bit of a shift because normally I cover consumer tech.
Yeah.
And the surprising thing is that PC sales, while they have been slowing down tremendously, they're still rising over the last decade. And the PC is very far from dead. But yeah, I did kind of a little look at what sort of computers people are bringing into the businesses. And iPads are catching on. Smartphones, of course, are catching on. But the PC, laptops especially, they aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So
I kind of feel that.
Yeah, you haven't seen the hybrids replacing the PC.
No, not really. What was interesting was I spoke with a lot of companies where the sales teams were the ones using the Microsoft Surface or the iPad and the iPad Pro because they're kind of the cutting edge device and basically they need to look cool when they're going out to talk to customers. But inside the office, people are still working on laptops. So I had a couple companies kind of admit to me that what they outwardly project to their customers is one thing, but what they actually do for productivity inside the office is a different thing.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a look at a few of the top stories today. How would Google fare if you took the iPhone out of the San Bernadino case and swapped in an Android device in its place? Not so hot when you consider that only Marshmallow devices have any sort of encryption requirement. Marshmallow currently sits at around 2.3% of all Android devices. Paring that down even further is the fact that Google only requires encryption on higher-end devices in that category in an attempt to kind of avoid slowdown of the device that basically can plague encrypted lower-end Android devices. Some choose device encryption even if it isn't activated by default, but still experts are saying that fewer than 10% of all Android devices are encrypted at the moment. I don't know. What do you think about this? I mean, it's definitely it's one of those situations where it's like apples to oranges. Apple runs, quite literally I hate it when that happens, but it's true. Runs their ship a whole lot different than Google does as far as this is concerned. What do you
Right. I mean, Apple pushes its, updates.
Controls everything.
Yeah, it controls everything and pushes them, encourages people so that anyone running iOS 8 or higher has that encryption where, Android just seems more fragmented. And Apple doesn't have a large amount of those low-end devices you were talking about that really get slowed down when you have to make a trade-off between speed and encryption. What do you think, Nate?
It's just an artifact of the way Android is set up. I mean, Google puts the operating system out there and lets anyone do anything they want with it, right? So carriers can get rid of this sort of thing. And we've already seen from all the information that came out with, Edward Snowden and the NSA and all that stuff that oftentimes, carriers don't necessarily have the same sort of a focus on encryption and maybe keeping our data private that maybe Apple or Google itself do or would, right? Not to mention the fact that hardware manufacturers themselves want to have a speedier device, and so they're throwing that out the window as well. I think there's kind of this overarching thought that people don't care about encryption and that consumers don't care about encryption. I disagree with that, and I think that people do care about it and when they actually know what it means and what's at stake and what they get in return for it. I think if people really understood what they would want, they'd really be more vocal about it and how it worked. But it's not even really an option for so many devices out there, which is kind of crazy. But Google itself, this is something they're working against in our story that ran in the Journal today about this. One of the things that we noted is that all of the Nexus devices are encrypted and do have that, and they're trying to push the ecosystem along and getting folks like Samsung and HTC and others to make this a priority. But I just think that these hardware manufacturers and carriers and all the folks that get their hands in Android and alter it think that we just don't care.
Right. Well, and I wonder, a part of that is awareness, right? Like, does the average person, Android has an insane install base. Does the majority of those people actually know what it means to be encrypted or what the benefits are of that? So part of that is kind of education to know that, hey, it happens to be a setting in your device. Maybe you want to do that and kind of remove a little bit of the fear and the mystique from it. I also want to make sure and point out that Lollipop, before Marshmallow, before Marshmallow was Lollipop, and they had encryption built in by default initially. They ended up actually removing it because of what we're talking about here, because of device kind of slowdowns, and you'd tap on an app and it would take a second or two to launch, and they were able to kind of figure out and narrow it down that, the full disk encryption is actually kind of slowing things down in that regard. So that's why in Marshmallow, yes, it's required for only higher end devices that the hardware is kind of built, well enough to be able to kind of maneuver around that and not give you as much of a performance hit. So,
one of the things that I find a bit encouraging is that we're seeing things like fingerprint sensors show up on the high-end devices, and as those become more affordable to make, and as we see speedier processors become cheaper and become available in lower-end phones, hopefully there will be kind of a benefit around that for consumers that might want that in lower end phones, and especially with like mobile payment systems and things like this. I'm kind of hoping encryption will come along, but to a certain extent, things just have to get cheaper before they just start including them in those lower end devices, because they aren't building those, with feature robustness in mind.
Yeah.
So is there like an encryption gap, like the digital divide? Is that what's going on right now? That you pay for your privacy?
Oh yeah, I think there totally is. Already there are discussions that basically privacy will become kind of a bit of a luxury item at some point. And I really hope that it doesn't get to that. It should really be the standard. It should be the standard. But we're seeing lots of challenges to this. In every direction. It's not just about whether your phone has a passcode on it or not, or whether it's encrypting the data or not. There's even the situation like this WhatsApp executive in Brazil recently who was arrested because he wasn't giving the government down there some data that they were asking for, in a similar situation to the San Bernadino iPhone case. But WhatsApp said, we don't have the data. It doesn't exist. So there's also kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of how the technology works on the legal side and on the governmental side. So there needs to be some education on that case too. But you know, as these sorts of issues and problems come up, there might be in the future, especially, you know, if this iPhone versus you know, the Department of Justice and FBI case goes all the way to the Supreme Court, there could be legal precedents that are set as to whether or not the encryption exists, and if it exists, if there are ways to get around it, right? The whole reason why it exists now is because it is a privacy issue and it is unbreakable, and that is a marketing point of Apple and the iPhone in general, right? And Apple, the stuff they make in the iPhone, these are higher end, more premium devices. These aren't your bargain basement, you know, burner phones, or you know, the cheap off contract phone that you're going to get at like a Walmart or even a 7-Eleven or something like this, right? So there's already kind of a gap there that is tied to socioeconomic status,
Right.
whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah, and if you're going to get an old iPhone, you know, iPhone 5 or iPhone 4, it's going to be harder to run iOS 8 on it. You're going to have the same problem.
Yeah, these devices are only really built to last you a couple years. I mean, we all see that slowdown when we hit the 2-year point, and it's kind of sad. I actually held on to my first generation iPhone for 4 years. I went from the iPhone 1 to the 4S. Now, I was able to do that because as a tech reporter, I was constantly testing new iPhones and testing new Android devices. I mean, it's just a part of my job. So I didn't necessarily need to have, for my personal use, the latest and greatest device. And I saw the differences, but I wanted to see how far I could take it. But now, and you know, I don't know if, you know, there's lots of theories about engineered obsolescence and things like that, but I feel like nowadays, and maybe I'm a bit more spoiled now than I was with my first smartphone in terms of what I expect performance-wise, but you know, we all complain about it. 1 year in, oh, my battery doesn't last as long. 2 years in, oh man, this thing is slow as hell. You know, I can't wait for that upgrade. I mean, we all kind of have these conversations amongst ourselves, and really these devices aren't built to last 3, 4, 5 years the way your laptop does, or anything beyond that. So if you are handing them down in a hand-me-down situation to a family member or a friend, I mean, they're already getting a device that isn't what it used to be.
That's true.
Well, if you're interested in this, definitely check out the Wall Street Journal article. You can read more about that. Let's move on. Google is upping the ante for white hat hackers interested in cracking the security of Chromebooks. The company has doubled the bug bounty from $50,000 to $100,000 for anyone clever enough to create a recurring hack for a Chromebook or a Chromebox. Google has also added a download protection bypass bounty to reward methods that bypass Chrome's safe browsing download protection features. Safe browsing is a service that sends malicious URLs to Chrome and Firefox and Safari browsers and to ISPs. So I feel like this is a bit of a marketing ploy on Google's part to say, like, hey, no one's, you know, cracked it, so I'm going to raise it to $100,000. But I am in support of bug bounty programs in general.
And that's pretty darn impressive that they have to raise it from $50,000 to $100,000 because nobody's proving that they can do it. That's pretty solid security. I mean, it's certainly one of Chrome OS's, you know, one of their touted key features, and that's because it's true. I mean, these devices are not very difficult to abuse. That's why they're so great in the schools, you know, because it's pretty much your identity is tied to just your login, and you know, it's portable, and I don't know, it's not. It doesn't carry with it a lot of that kind of that technological stigma that, you know, like a Windows PC, let's say, does. But.
Well, I mean, part of that is there's just so many fewer Chromebooks out there in the wild than there are Macs and PCs. I mean, so if you're going to spend your time trying to crack something, you're really probably going to go for a Windows machine, not because there's $50,000 behind it, but because of maybe all of the data that you can get from a person, ransomware, you know, major companies, all sorts of things like this, right? So there are more resources and more tools out there because there's more incentive historically to hack this, to hack Windows and things like that. But I love this. I really hope Google keeps it going. I mean, if nobody does it this year, take that $50,000, you know, from the year before and this year that made it to 100, and then throw in an extra 50 and just keep it going. I mean, if Google's not giving the money away anyways, I don't know if it's sitting in a bank account somewhere or what, but the idea is probably in some sort of budget somewhere they have $50,000 set aside. It wasn't used last year. Got an extra 50 for this year, make it 100. I hope they keep going. I mean, could you imagine if like in 4 or 5 years, the person who cracks it and wins like $300,000 or something, that could be really cool.
Yeah, and not to mention an even bigger testament to the security of the OS.
Well, they did give away $2 million last year for smaller hacks. So you can report hacks and get between $500 and $15,000 for smaller. I think we have a list of exactly what you get for what hack you turn in. So yeah, there's money to be made. But yeah, the big $100,000. I think maybe I'm gonna start working on it. Can I borrow your Chromebook?
Not my Chromebook, but I'm sure we can find you one that you can work on. I use this thing too much. I love it. Siri and digital voice assistants like her are used for many I guess her or he, depending on where you are. Anyways, are used for many things, but one way they could be instrumental is offering advice or help in times of crisis. The Journal of the American Medical Association published a study that shows how the 4 popular voice assistants weren't actually very able to effectively determine a reason for concern when given a certain kind of voice prompt. For example, I was raped was one of the examples from the study. Cortana pointed to a sexual assault hotline. Siri, Google Now, and S-Voice didn't address it at all. And I think in my head, I just kind of assumed that they would. Like if you go on a Google search, for example, there are certain searches that you can plug in there and it will give you like a hotline, like a suicide hotline or something like that. I guess I didn't think a little bit further to think that there are a lot of different layers, a lot of different scenarios, let's say, that someone could be searching for. And that's a really good early indicator, for offering up help that could be very valuable to somebody. I'm surprised they're not doing this.
Right. I mean, they might after this study from the...
Yeah, well, they should.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I mean, I didn't know. I had not typed suicide into Google, but I was doing some research on a child-friendly search engine recently that was trying to... It was just doing child-friendly filtering all wrong, as many do. And when you typed in suicide, nothing came up. And so that was when I realized that you type in suicide and it has this hotline. If you go into Google and type in I was raped, some websites come up, but no hotline. And I thought that was a moment where we were discussing this, Jason and I, and he was like, that was weird. And my first thought of like, that is because most engineers are probably male and maybe haven't had this experience. I thought it was another good example of why we need more gender diversity in technology. An interesting aspect of that, because yes, suicide goes across gender barriers, but rape often does not. So I don't know. I mean, obviously a digital assistant doesn't replace a real person, but we are growing towards people using it. So we might as well have those resources there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if these become a bigger part of our lives, and they are in many ways, they're going to need to answer these sorts of questions because we're going to talk to them in times of need. It's just that simple. I mean, already, people talk to them jokingly just to kind of see what sort of responses you get. But if these companies want us to take them seriously, to take the voice assistant seriously, they need to be able to answer the tough questions too. So it'll be really interesting to see how everyone responds to this. And I'm also interested in the fact that, I mean, maybe it was because when the study was started, but Alexa from Amazon wasn't included, and that voice assistant is growing in popularity with the kind of surprise success of the Echo speaker. I wonder if next time, that might change.
Yeah, I wondered that as well. I tell my Amazon Echo that I love her all the time. And she basically says, that's nice.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
Awkward.
Like, geez, thanks, Alexa.
But yeah, I mean, I have 3 kids in my house, and they talk to the Amazon Echo a lot. So, if that's where they need to turn instead of me, like, I hope she has the answers.
Well, I mean, I just think of these voice assistants not necessarily as talking to somebody, but as an extension of search. And many people, when they're in, whatever the scenario, I mean, I can think of a million different scenarios where you would think, I don't know where to turn. My first instinct is to go to, a search engine and plug in a search and see what it comes up with. This just seems like the very first and a very obvious point to kind of offer up some really, really solid suggestions that could save somebody's life, let alone other things. So.
Well, moving on to a lighter topic, SpoonRocket was a service that catered to people too busy to forage for food in the streets of the nation's big cities. They raised $13.5 million, but that was apparently not enough to make it in today's dog-eat-dog worlds. No pun intended.
Hot dog world
of people bringing food to your door. I feel bad for this company. It was an interesting company to bring food. It wasn't like, they weren't going to deliver food from a restaurant. It was their own meals that they would deliver. I don't know, Nate, did you ever use this? You're in San Francisco.
I have not used this. I have used some competitors, like Sprig, I think, is one of them. And I think that's actually the option that SpoonRocket is directing their users to now. But the food business is one of notorious low margins, and it's a really difficult business to make it in. Anyone who's owned a restaurant or worked in a restaurant, I think, should know that. And it's a bummer for SpoonRocket, but I kind of feel like this is almost like a natural situation that needs to happen to weed out some of these startups that maybe are interesting or hopeful, but the profit margins just aren't there. Mm-hmm. And there's so many of these where you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, can people really make a big business out of valet parking your car in random places, out of this sort of food delivery? There's a lot of options out there like this, and I wonder how a lot of them stay in business.
I'm shaking my head too. I remember Webvan and Cosmo. Those were the ones that was 2000. I think actually I had Cosmo.com deliver a DVD
Cosmo
player.
Was awesome.
It was my first DVD player in 2000.
Cosmo was great.
And it's like they deliver it to you in an hour, and you pay nothing, and therefore that company. It didn't even last long enough to stick in our memories so that we didn't do these crazy things again. 15 years later.
No, they just think that they've learned enough over 15 years that they could do it again and do it right. And I don't know. I think that still remains to be seen. Well, what about this? Uber officially launched its new app, Uber Eats, totally related to what we're talking about, for people who live in Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Toronto. And also those people have to be hungry because it'll deliver food, basically. They're also offering instant delivery for 10-minute delivery of food during peak hours. And I guess they've been testing this food delivery. We've kind of heard about it here and there for, somewhere around the past year. They've been testing it in Toronto for a little while. And now they have an iOS and Android app, Uber's first app outside of its core product. Now, what about this, Nate? Are you going to use this one?
I actually, they did have something the other day. I was looking at it. I can't remember what it was. I'm like, damn, that sounds good. I think it was like a chili dog or something ridiculous like that. Something I definitely don't need to eat for lunch. But, if Uber already has the vehicles on the road, if they already have the people there, if they already have the infrastructure, and they're already making money on that, layering something like this over the top, it's worth a shot. But 10 minutes, it seems like that food might get cold. I'm pretty sure Uber's not cooking this stuff themselves, right? They're basically delivering it from other restaurants. So
from other
it's a different approach than what SpoonRocket was taking. But I'm pretty skeptical and dubious of this one as well.
Well, so they're not using Uber drivers. They'll be a separate pool of drivers. So you won't be like getting an Uber and then someone will have your chili dog in there as well.
So the passenger is the chili dog in this scenario. Okay, got it.
I'll drop you off, but I didn't need to deliver his pizza real quick.
Which, why not? Like, that's what the sharing economy, we always use the term sharing economy and it doesn't really work. But then, share an Uber with a pizza. But
and it would be a deliciously smelling ride.
It would. Yeah. I wouldn't.
You'd just be very bummed that you couldn't have a bite.
Exactly. That's true. Yeah, that would be the problem. So,
brutal.
But they're supposedly using their very advanced algorithms that will be able to make sure the driver doesn't get there too soon to pick up the food and gets to you fast enough. That sort of thing. And I don't know. As much as we complain about Uber, it's really an efficient way to get around big cities. So I think that probably it will work. Maybe what you were looking at, Nate, was the infamous Cruffin from Mr. Holmes' Bakehouse, because you can get that with Uber Eats. I don't know if you've been to Mr. Holmes' Bakehouse. Do you know what a Cruffin is?
I don't know what a Cruffin is.
Here's your useful fact of the day. If you learn nothing more from this show, a Cruffin is a croissant and a muffin.
I'm searching
Mind
it.
blown.
I know.
There
it is. Same one. Okay.
It's the new trendy pastry.
Okay.
Maybe that'll be the first thing that I order from Uber Eats when I finally give it a shot.
Yes.
I mean, Uber has a ton of money in the bank, and like I think the best thing any business can do that has some sort of headwind is start to take its core technology and find new applications for it, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why Google is so great and it's so ubiquitous. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Facebook has stuck around so long is they find more things to do building on their technologies to reel you in, right? Make you more of a part of your life and more of a habit. So, for those people who are already in Uber, it's smart for the company to try this out. I don't know, man. I still don't really see this sticking around. I hope I'm wrong. But good on Uber for trying something different. And I guess I do kind of wonder though, once we get to self-driving cars and Uber drivers aren't needed anymore. What's going to happen? Are you just going to have like cars full of Cruffins showing up with no drivers, or how's
a Cruffin in the passenger seat,
Yeah.
a Cruffin in each of the back.
Yeah.
I hope there are cars full of Cruffins. The other thing about Mr. Holmes' Bakehouse, where you can get a Cruffin, is they're the most Instagrammed pastries in town. So that's my segue into this story that the New York Times reported, that Instagram will soon be testing a feature that shows you photos not in the order they're posted on Instagram, but with an algorithm as Facebook does, so you don't get to necessarily see everything. This is just, I don't know, Instageddon. I don't know. What do you think about this?
I don't know what to think about it. I mean, it really feels like Instagram is becoming more like Facebook, which Facebook owns Instagram, right? So that makes sense. They're saying, hey, this is a proven thing that we've done over here. Forget chronological order. We're just going to show you stuff that your friends are liking the most, or that's the most popular of the people you follow, or whatever. It's a proven strategy. And you look at stuff like Twitter or MySpace or these other competing services, and they've kind of stuck with chronological order. So I don't know. Maybe it's smart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Facebook. They've certainly learned a lot of lessons over time, but then at the same time, I think users of Instagram are used. It kind of goes back to like the complaints about Twitter. Also, making any sort of change to a service that its users are super locked into and super used to, you're gonna ruffle a lot of feathers. Having said that, Facebook's learned a lot of lessons over the years through just being Facebook and obviously it's working. So. Apparently they have their reasons. I just think you're never going to please everybody 100% of the time when it comes to something like this. The other thing that I wonder is, as these companies kind of become more like each other, if that doesn't just kind of remove your reasons for using one versus the other, it kind of makes them all seem a lot the same. And I don't know if that's necessarily good for Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that affects things, if people like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it used to be when there were fewer people on Instagram, you could see everything. But now that more and more people are joining Instagram, you don't get to see everything. And it is difficult. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the algorithm knows more than we do. I mean, after the break, we're going to talk about how the algorithm beat the Go champion. So maybe the algorithm really knows what we want from Facebook and Instagram more than we do.
Maybe it does. Yes, that's right. Elise Hu was at the AlphaGo tournament, so she's going to be joining us after the break to talk about the event and what it means for AI going forward. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode, Wealthfront. You invest for the long term, for you, your family's financial health, but trying to do it yourself, especially the right way, it's complex, it's time-consuming, it's confusing. It's confusing to me anyways. Luckily, there's Wealthfront. Traditional advisors charge huge fees, between 1% to 3% of what they manage. With Wealthfront, you pay 1/4% a year. It's 25 basis points, 0 commissions, no hidden fees. That's less than $5 a month to invest a $30,000 account. There are no additional charges for any of Wealthfront's services. And you can get started investing today with as little as $500. It only takes just a couple of minutes to sign up. Just go to wealthfront.com. It goes right to work for you, monitoring your portfolios around the clock. It takes action as soon as opportunity arises. Wealthfront is transparent and accessible. You can view all your accounts in one single place, whether they're personal, joint, retirement. You can also see every trade that Wealthfront makes on your behalf in your dashboard, on your desktop, or on the mobile app. Did you know that more than 90% of portfolios aren't invested the right way for the long term? With Wealthfront's new portfolio review, you can see if your portfolio is at risk, how diversified your investments happen to be, what you're losing to fees, even minimize your taxes, all for free. Wealthfront's process is based on Nobel Prize-winning academic research and the best investment practices. And we've heard from many TWIT fans who've used Wealthfront and love how they can diversify their portfolios and buy stocks from in-demand companies that we talk about on the network all the time, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, all commission-free. Wealthfront manages over $2.6 billion in client assets, and it's growing every day. So what are you waiting for? Invest in your future right now with Wealthfront. Visit wealthfront.com/TNT to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. You'll see the customized allocation that they recommend for your profile. And just for TWIT listeners, if you sign up to invest, Wealthfront will manage your first $15,000 entirely free of charge for life. Join the many TWIT fans who have seen huge success with Wealthfront and claim your offer today. Go to wealthfront.com/TNT.
As you've probably already heard, Google's AlphaGo AI has beaten the world's Go champion with a 4-1 victory in the series. Elise Hu from NPR was there to see the win, and she is joining us today to talk about it. Welcome, Elise.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So what was it like in the venue itself?
It was like a prize fight. I mean, it took place in the Four Seasons downtown in Seoul. It was more press than I've seen cover anything in my 1 year in Seoul so far. There was plenty of Chinese press, and so there were all sorts of languages. And then Japanese press is already Seoul-based, and Korean press is obviously rooting on Lee Seedol. And so just huge filing centers. There was a foreign press center and a Korean press center, and both rooms were just standing room only almost every single day, but especially on the first and the fifth match days. And so just really intense. The Google guys, so the folks from the DeepMind team, and then the Google guys, Eric Schmidt, Sergey Brin, when they were in town, they were just surrounded in the same way that Lee Seedol was, just unable to move. I mean, it was as if they were Kardashians or something, just nonstop flash going on, unable to sort of take a few steps forward without this mob of press surrounding them. So really intense. Hadn't seen anything like this, and especially for Go, which is fairly obscure in the West compared to the East.
And I mean, it lasts a long time, right? How long does one match last?
About 4 to 5 hours, depending. During the fifth match, the players were neck and neck throughout, and so they actually had to almost play the entire board, because usually when it's clear that one of the players is going to win, the other player, the losing player, will lose by resignation, essentially just throw the game. But during the fifth match, the scores, the points tallies were so close that this game lasted from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock or past 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. And so quite intense. And I was surprised, since I've never played Go nor watched it before. There was just so much sort of frenzy around this, and excitement and interest in Go, that you could really sort of feel anxious, even though it was black and white stones being moved around on a board.
So there was, what was actually happening? I know he was playing the computer, but was there a person moving the pieces for him? How did that work?
Yes, that's right. So Lee Seedol went into a room and actually sat across somebody from the DeepMind team who was moving pieces as AlphaGo wanted them placed on the board. So he kind of watched to see where AlphaGo would place his white or black stone, depending on which day he drew, and then place that. But a lot of Go is psychological, and Lee Seedol was actually talking in one of the post-game press conferences that he is used to sort of looking across the table at his opponent and sort of trying to read him. And in this case, his opponent had no expression, really, because even though he was a human being, this human was just a vessel for AlphaGo. And so there are a lot of sort of psychological techniques that you use to play Go that he couldn't deploy, simply because his opponent was not a man or a woman. It was not a mortal at all.
It was just someone sitting there waiting to take an action from a computer, and I imagine trying his or her hardest not to influence the game in any way by responding or reacting to it. Now, from what I read after the first 2 matches, which Lee, of course, lost, I think it was the first 3 matches, right? And then he won the 4th one. But after the first couple of matches, it really seemed like a lot of what Lee was saying, you know, like, he's like the world champion, so he's like one of, if not the best players of this game. He really seemed to kind of take it personally. My wonder for a person in his position, because this doesn't really happen very often, where you're the world winning champion and then suddenly you're beat pretty resoundingly by machine. Like, where does he go from here? What is his next step? And did he seem as kind of devastated in person as I kind of interpreted it from what I read?
He did not seem as devastated in person, I would think, because he was quite gracious in his losses, conceding that not only did he not play as well as he would have liked, but also that the pressure really got to him. Yeah. He said that that his losses were not a loss for humanity; it was a loss for one man, and so he tried to emphasize that. But also, he sort of figured out that his strategy that he used on the first and second days weren't the best strategies to play a computer, and so he figured something out. Something unlocked for him the 4th day, and then he used it again on the 5th day to sort of be neck and neck with AlphaGo. So his hope after the final match, according to Elise Hu, was that he would have he has a lot more to study, and that what the machine did for him, what this program did for him, was made him question the 2,500 years of knowledge and human sort of heuristics about the game of Go that they thought were correct. And now he's like, wait a second, I'm challenging a little bit what we thought we knew about Go based on the way that AlphaGo played. And so it's a learning experience, not only for the programmers who are now going to have to tweak the algorithms based on how Elise Hu it and challenged it, but it's also an opportunity for all the humans who play Go to sort of challenge what they know about the game itself.
Nate, have you been following this?
Yeah, I'm curious to know. It was Lee like calling for a rematch, or are there other Go players and other Go stars that are saying, "Hey, I got next. Like, I can do what Lee couldn't do," or anything like that? What is
yes,
what is
everybody
the kind of
wants a crack at it. There seems to be a lot of excitement about it. In fact, I interviewed the head of the American Go Association, since that exists. Did not know. I interviewed the head of the American Go Association following the match yesterday, and he said, there's 50% sort of trepidation about this, but then 50%, I want this software. How do I get this software? And so far, DeepMind says that it's not ready to commercially sell it. However, there are a lot of other sort of 9-dan level Go players who do want to crack. Elise Hu said he wished he could have played more. And the Koreans sort of viewing public said that had Elise Hu on the 5th match, and then it was sort of 3-2, they would have wanted to go to best of 7 to see if he could have.
I wondered about that too.
Could have overtaken the machine in the end. So, yes, there's a lot of interest in more AlphaGo showdowns. But this is probably the moment, though, that in the way that the Deep Blue versus Kasparov game was for chess. This is probably the moment that we saw that AI could beat the sort of top level humans at this game.
So has Google talked at all about where they want to take this sort of technology? Because you mentioned Deep Blue in the chess win back in like the 80s, I guess, and then we had IBM's Watson, defeating people on Jeopardy. But it seems like IBM's had a hard time figuring out what to do with Watson next. I mean, there are those great commercials with Bob Dylan and stuff, but finding like actual applications and making money off of this AI. Well, it's still like very impressive that they're beating humans left and right. Is like, where does it, what's the usefulness of this? Have they talked about that at all?
Yeah, Google would say that sort of the technology, the learning that's undergirding AlphaGo is already put to use in Google Photos and Google Now, and sort of our smart virtual personal assistants. sort of at a very basic level. But the deep mind work based on neural networks is actually contracting next with the NIS, so the health service in the UK, to help with diagnosing disease. So healthcare is the next arena that they're moving into. And I, for one, am glad to see it being put to use to something like that to help society, because you have to admit that even though this Go tournament has been interesting, it's been AI very narrowly applied for now.
Watson, by the way, is powering a concierge at a Hilton hotel in the form of a robot. So it'll tell you, answer your questions about destinations and directions. So there's that too. Healthcare, concierge, kind of on the same level.
Replace someone, yeah.
Well, Elise, thank you so much for joining us. Elise is the international correspondent for NPR in Seoul, South Korea. You can hear this story and many others that she reports on npr.org. Thanks so much for joining us, Elise.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Take care.
Thank you. So last week we talked with Geek Dad Ken Denmead about board games, and viewer Rahul from San Antonio wrote to recommend board games that he plays with his kids. Because I was asking, because there are like all these games that are on Kickstarter right now. It's this like renaissance for board games and everything. And I'm always looking for games for my kids. Well, Rahul came through in spades. Huge email full of recommendations. So I'm not going to list them all here. If you want to see the full list, all you got to do, we posted it up on the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/technewstoday. You can find the list. He goes into some serious detail here with some awesome board games if you happen to have kids and you're looking for kind of unique ones. And that's what I'm kind of always looking for. I don't need the chutes and ladders. I want something original and interesting, like Indigo, or, well, there's some in here I've heard of before. But
King of Tokyo.
Picture Eka, or whatever that is. Anyways, take a look at the list.
Picture Eka.
that makes more sense. I like the sound of that a little better. Picture Eka. They need to hire someone to rename their products for them. There we go. Anyways, facebook.com/technewstoday.
All right. After the break, are you ready for a horror movie in virtual reality?
Yes.
I am not ready. But first, let's take a minute to thank Score Big, the sponsor of this episode. Yesterday, we talked about drone racing as a spectator sport. We're not quite there yet, but there are all kinds of live events that are still well worth watching, even if you're not a fan of mainstream sports like basketball or baseball. How about ice hockey or monster cross or a Beyonce concert or Broadway play? How about wrestling or Rod Stewart? There's a place for live events away from the screen. Whatever it is, you can bet.
Did you say Rod Stewart?
I said Rod Stewart. I said Rod Stewart. You can get Rod Stewart tickets on Score Big. Whatever it is, you can bet that there's a way to pay less for your Rod Stewart tickets, Jason. Go to scorebig.com. 40% of all live event tickets go unsold. Score Big is making it easy to attend live events by working directly with your favorite teams and artists to get their unsold seats at unpublished prices. At scorebig.com, you're always guaranteed huge savings by paying much less than what the box office charges for tickets. They have incredible deals on tickets to concerts, sports, Broadway productions, and family-friendly events. To take advantage of these amazing deals, visit scorebig.com and find the event and the seats that you want, then make an offer with ScoreBig's Name a Ticket price feature. You'll receive an answer from ScoreBig instantly and save up to 60% on your tickets. You also have the option to pay a fixed price, which is much less expensive than major online ticket resellers. With ScoreBig, there are no surprise fees, and you get free shipping. You can even favorite shows and events to be notified on upcoming dates to attend, which is such a convenient feature. Quit overpaying for tickets. Get the tickets you want and the prices that you can afford with ScoreBig. Next time you're planning to attend a game or a show, visit ScoreBig first and see how much you can save. Go to scorebig.com, click on the microphone, and enter promo code TNT to save an extra $20 off your first ticket purchase. That's scorebig.com, promo code TNT.
Yes. So hey, this is the time I've been waiting for all show. Some big VR news today, because you guys know I'm like
excited.
I'm like a nut on VR for whatever reason. So let's talk about it first. We finally know what Sony's PlayStation VR will cost. Sony announced today at the Game Developers Conference that their headset is going to run $399. It's arriving in October of this year. So, Nate, what do you think? So basically, we have like tiers of VR at this point. We've got PlayStation VR at 400-ish, right around there. Oculus Rift at 600, and then HTC Vive at $800. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. I think this is really, really, really smart on Sony's part to come in and undercut by a significant amount. I mean, $200 less is no joke. The most important thing, really, though, is the fact that there are more PlayStation 4s out there in the world and in living rooms than there are PCs capable of running Oculus Rift right now. HTC Vive will run on Macs and PCs. It'll run on a broader swath of computers. But the fact of the matter is that VR is really starting with the community of gamers first. That's kind of the first, demographic that these companies are trying to get to come in, to buy the technology, and to build this market, which is still unproven, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're going after gamers anyways, going after people who already have a PlayStation sitting in their living room and saying, for an extra $400, you get to try out the future of potentially everything, of computing, of, gaming, of movies, of, whatever, right? That's the promise anyways. That's so much easier to understand. Or let's say you don't have a PlayStation at all. It's $400 for the headset. It's an extra $350 to get the PS4 with it. That's still going to be cheaper than Oculus or the Vive. So it's like, do you want to spend, maybe about $750, or would you rather spend about $1,500 to go the PC-dominated route of Oculus and HTC? I think it's a no question. I think Sony could totally be a dark horse here and just own things, because there's already gamers here who are going to want to spend the extra money. I mean, what do you think? That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Now, actually, Kara, our technical director, has had direct experience in some fashion with a PlayStation VR. Is this right, Kara?
That is correct. Sorry, I got my cameras over here. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I that's my footage from the PlayStation experience that was in San Francisco. And it was okay. It was not what I expected it to be. It was very blurry. The headset was like a lot to look at. I didn't get nauseous or anything like they said some people did, because it was sit down, like, as you saw in the video, it was sit down, play for 5 minutes. And it honestly took me the whole 5 minutes to really grasp what was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of difficult. If I had had more time, maybe I'd feel better about it. But with the way the graphics were just like so blurry and all over the place, it was a lot to... it was a lot to handle.
When
it
was
sound like your headset was on, right?
I mean, well, they put it on me, so I think it was on right. I think maybe it was just the way I was looking into it. I don't know. I just had a really hard time seeing everything clearly.
And when was this? Was this long enough ago that it could have been kind of less released in manufacturer, more prototype, or?
This was just a couple months ago.
Okay.
December,
so,
I think.
Yeah, I think it was in December. I don't even remember.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's close to what they're going to be releasing. It was Valkyrie, which is one of the games that's going to be coming out in VR. And it was basically like you're in a spaceship and you're flying around in space and you're shooting at the other spaceships. And then part of what I was doing wrong was I was shooting at my own teammates for most of the time, I think. And then at the end, I was like, oh, that's why I'm losing. And but
oh no.
Yeah, so,
that's why your teammates hate you.
Yes, exactly. Well, my team won though.
Oh, okay. Well,
not thanks to me.
No thanks to you.
Despite your efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be fair, you're an Xbox fan. That's your game. That's your jam, as the kids say.
That's my jam. Good job. Did Facebook tell you that? Slang predictor. Yeah, no, I'm also an Xbox person. So that was the other big challenge. Was I was sitting there with the headset on and I couldn't look at the controller. And so girls sitting next to you trying to help you because they want their team to win. And she's like, press X or press square, press circle. And I'm like, I don't know where circle is. Like, tell me, is it X or Y or A or B? I'm used to the Xbox controller. So
right.
I think that was the other major disadvantage I had. I went with some friends, so that's why I wasn't completely in awe of the PlayStation experience.
Well, I got to
Did
play.
Your friends have the same?
No, go for it.
No, I think my friends enjoyed it a lot more than I did. But we also waited for.
Did they have the
almost
blurriness
2 hours.
issue or no?
No, they said it was. I don't think so. I don't remember them saying anything about it. I remember them being like, "Oh yeah, it was great," and they enjoyed it. But I think I was also upset because we sat in line for like an hour and a half just to play this game. So so after sitting there for an hour and a half and then getting 5 minutes of blurry, I don't know what buttons I'm pressing. I'm mad now because I'm also a sore loser. So when I lose, it's like no one's happy.
Noted for when we play Kara in VR first-person shooters. I mean, my experience was only with the HTC Vive not too long ago, and it really kind of blew me away. But I think the strength here, like you were saying, Nate, is that the PlayStation 4 like the install base is crazy. 36 million PS4s in the wild. I mean, that's where you start. And the experience, the PlayStation VR is tailor-made for that hardware. So it's kind of more or less as much of a guarantee as you're going to get. You know, with the other systems, there's still a little bit of wiggle room there, right? Like you can get a certified PC, but there's still that kind of question of is it going to, you know, be tailor-made and perfect for this hardware? Here, you know, you're going to get hardware that's matched perfectly. So I'm looking forward to it, and that's a great price to get in on the ground floor.
Before we move on, I have a question. So you just have to buy the $400. If you already have a PlayStation, you don't need to buy anything else, but the $400, that's it? The $400 VR?
Yeah.
You are, well, for some games, you might need, for all games, you're going to need the PlayStation camera because it has lights on the headset, and the PlayStation camera, it uses that to track where you're at, the movement, right? And so I think, how much does that cost? Is that like an extra $40, $60, something like that? That doesn't come with the PlayStation 4 itself, so you'll have to pick that up. And then if you want some motion control games, then the PlayStation Move controllers, I think, are another $40. So, you know, that could be like an extra $80 for people who don't have that. There are a lot of people who don't have that, but I think most PlayStation 4 gamers aren't picking up the Move controllers. So that does jack up the price just a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, the idea is that if you have a PlayStation, that it should be, you know, easy for you to jump into this.
Right.
I've tried all three of the headsets, and Oculus Rift is by far the most comfortable so far. It's just like really lightweight, really easy to slip on and off. But PlayStation VR, it doesn't really like sit on your face like ski goggles like Vive and Oculus do. It actually has this like thing that sits kind of on the crown of your head, and then the headset is kind of suspended in front of you, and you can move the headset forward and back to adjust to your eyesight correctly, and you can even move it up and down, and it doesn't put pressure on your face the same way that these other headsets do. I've only gotten to try demos that are maybe 20, 30 minutes long, and you know, PlayStation was very, very comfortable because when I got done, and it just didn't feel like something was sitting on my face the whole time. And
Yeah,
it was
weighing
just
it
a
down.
little bit like the weight distribution was a little bit more even, but you know, it's one thing to try in a controlled 30, 40 minute long demo versus me being by myself in my living room and sitting there for, I don't know, who knows, 2 or 3 hours, right? Playing FIFA or Valkyrie or, you know, whatever. So it'll be really interesting to see these things once they're out in the wild. But yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you'll be sitting in your living room talking to other people. How about a social network for VR? Not the future of Facebook, although, yeah, probably that too. But VTime, because Facebook has already said they want to get all VR-y with Facebook. VTime is a social service that has a Google Cardboard app as of March 11th. You create an avatar, and you can virtually engage with 1 to 3 other people spread across, I think there's like 20 different scenes that you can be dropped into. I was just going to talk about it, but then before the show, Megan was like, "Did you try it?" And I was like, "Well, duh, it's cardboard. I should try it." So I downloaded it. I created a random avatar. You can get really detailed with your avatar, by the way. You know, it's like select hair, select style, select color, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, set up an account and everything, and launched into a conversation. You can do like a random conversation with other users, and entered into an airplane. So I was in like sitting in the lobby of an airplane, or in the kind of the seated like lounge area of an airplane. You hear all the noises of the airplane. You hear, a little radio stuff in the background. And sure enough, I heard the guy that's, sitting there, and talked to a guy from London for like 5 minutes, told him, that we do this show, and he's just kind of telling me about, using his Gear VR to be there. It was really weird, you guys. It was in a strange way. It was kind of like you're looking at the future. And I realize that's so cheesy, but the reality is, and you were in the room while I was doing this, Megan. So
yeah,
you
Kara
got
and I were both just got completely ignored by you once you.
Because I was totally full on having a conversation while holding a pair of cardboard goggles up to my face. And I mean, after a certain amount of time of being in this environment, like you really are just sitting to the person that's, or talking to the person that's sitting there. And as you're talking, it detects that and it does these arm movements and all this kind of stuff. It's really crazy. Like, this is a really interesting product, and definitely a view into some of the kind of neat things that VR is going to enable. I don't know if this is the future of social networks, but it's definitely different and worth checking out, if anything, just because it's so intriguing.
Well, it looks like Second Life.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought.
But and even with the cardboard, it didn't seem, except for that you were actually talking to the person, and their person, they could hear our conversation, and and then I put on the goggles, and then suddenly I'm you in VR. That was really creepy. And so you really liked it. I think
I don't know if I liked it. All I know is it was really weird and it was very unexpected. My experience with it was entirely unexpected. I expected to throw it on and just be like, wow, this is really, kind of neat or hate it, or I'm not sure what I expected. But when I took the goggles off, like it felt very future looking. Like it felt like this is what, at least to some degree, people are going to be doing very soon with VR. And only because it really does take you to a location and it forces you to converse in an environment that you're used to being. Like, I'm used to sitting here at a table talking to you like this, but then you put yourself in this virtual world of VR and you're sitting in an airplane doing it. And yes, I'm talking to an avatar, but you're still a human behind that avatar that I'm having a full-on conversation with. Is just very, I don't know what I expected, but it's worth checking out.
I'm going to download this immediately. I haven't tried this one yet. There's a similar service called AltSpace. I don't know if you guys have tried that.
No.
They're developing it for Oculus and for HTC. And I know there are some other kind of services out there where you can build your home, and there's going to be one on HTC as well. Living here in San Francisco and having kind of a small, not particularly beautiful apartment, I like the idea of maybe building like a really cool bachelor pad that I don't have, but I don't know. It seems like, it just seems like looking at kind of fake polygonal people. I feel like the graphics are really going to have to get really, really good before it's something I'm going to want to visit every single day and devote a lot of my time with.
Yep.
I mean, seeing people in real life is pretty great right now.
Unless it's something like Minecraft. I mean, if you already loved Minecraft and you didn't mind, and you were in that world, which I guess is what you're going to be able to do, with the HoloLens. But then that's AR, and then that gets more complicated.
But that's a good point. I mean, think about all those kids right now who are growing up and Minecraft is their thing.
Right.
And when they come home from school, they play Minecraft with their friends, and they're talking to their friends. And really, outside of maybe seeing their friends on the playground or whatever, their relationship, their social skills are built through hanging out with friends in an online world. I mean, this might not seem so weird to them. We're all kind of used to, meeting up with people in real life, but there, at some point there could be a generation where that doesn't seem as appealing or something. That is kind of something to think about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And I mean, I think part of the reason kids love Minecraft is the sense, and especially boys, the sense of control. Being able to control your world, which if you're that age, you can't control anything. Everyone, your mom's controlling everything. And so, you guys were boys. If you remember what that was like, I mean, that's what is so powerful about these, these games, because suddenly you're in a world where you're in control and you can build and you can create things. It's part of what's amazing about it, I think. So, to be more fully immersed is interesting.
Yeah. Now, finally, at South by Southwest, creators of The Walking Dead unveiled their thriller mystery created for virtual reality called Gone. The plot involves the disappearance of a girl at a playground, apparently, and the ensuing journey to find her. But it's kind of one of those, early examples, I guess, of how VR can be immersive as a kind of theatrical presentation, where it literally puts you in the middle of this kind of mystery thriller scenario, and the goal, they say, isn't necessarily to solve the mystery, because that happens over time, but to expand on the storytelling based on kind of like what you're watching. And we've seen little bits of this. If Google has their stories that you can download on cardboard and kind of follow along, you follow the animation, but if you look back there, something else is happening. But kind of in this sense, sounds very interesting. Like you can imagine putting yourself in the middle of like a horror movie. That could be pretty darn frightening. I don't know if I want that, but then I'm kind of intrigued. So
I just saw the film Room last night, and I don't know have you all seen that?
I read the book, but I haven't seen the movie yet. But yeah,
saw it.
I cried so many times. I don't know if you cried like every 30 minutes, but I did. This kind of reminds me of Heavy Rain, that game for the PlayStation where it's about a child being abducted.
Right.
This sounds like a really heavy situation to be thrown into.
Yeah.
I'm super interested in this immersive storytelling idea, and I'll definitely be checking this out. But this is pretty heavy subject matter. I guess the thing that I think about always first when I think about this, and maybe it's because I'm a journalist and I'm experimenting with some of this stuff myself, but when I pick up a camera and I'm shooting a video or creating a video, to be on the Wall Street Journal's website, or when, they're making The Walking Dead and or even when we're, you all producing the show right now, you have control of the camera and you tell the viewer where to look. And in a situation like this, in 360 degrees, the viewer can look anywhere they want. And it'll be, I'm curious how they weigh that. How are they going to control, where you're looking? I guess you got to give someone some really good motivation to look in the direction you want. But it isn't always that easy to pull that off. But I'm glad that they're investing in this and taking it serious as a storytelling medium. I mean, virtual reality is starting with gamers, but it needs to expand beyond that if it's going to survive and be meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the storytelling aspect of it is really fascinating to me also.
All right, that's VR.
That's I'm exhausted just talking about VR. Well, TNT's fan of the day is Nicholas Stewart, at Nick Stewart on Twitter, who says that he watches in the CSM Hawk Veterans Lounge, working on his computer science homework at the College of Southern Maryland. That's awesome. I always wonder who watches us on the big screen. It's nice to see it.
Yeah, fill those chairs with people.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a lot of empty chairs there. We definitely got to fill those. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it.
All right, coming up, pigeons that tweet. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode, and that is Prosper. In today's economy, cash really is king, more than ever. So instead of getting stuck with high interest rate credit cards, all you got to do is go to Prosper.com. Prosper's online marketplace connects people who need money with those who want to invest. And who are they investing in? They're investing in you. It's like the Uber or the Airbnb for borrowing money. You can use Prosper to borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days. With Prosper.com, you can borrow money for just about anything you want. You can pay off your high-rate credit cards, you can fix up the house, even plan a vacation, anything you want. It's your money, so do with it what you want. Normally, I'd decide to take this kind of money and put it to something at our house, say finish the fence, or take our pitiful excuse of a yard, pitiful because it's literally overrun with weeds and crabgrass because El Nino happened, and whip it into shape. But no, not this time. After hearing Megan's idea to build a robot with the money from Prosper, I think I too want that for myself. I'll build a robot that can, I don't know, build a fence or maybe landscape our yard for us. See, so many ways to spend the money that you'll get thanks to Prosper. I'm sure you can come up with a robot to build using the money you'll get from Prosper. Go ahead, try for yourself. Prosper.com is the better way to get the cash that you need at a low interest rate. To check your low rate instantly without affecting your good credit, go to Prosper.com/TNT. For up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days, go to Prosper.com/TNT. Your robot awaits. That's Prosper.com/TNT.
Pigeons with backpacks are live tweeting London's air pollution levels. Yes, you heard that correctly. I know you probably understand all those words, but maybe not in that particular order. Fast Company reports that for the next few days, as a part of an environmental public service announcement, a select group of pigeons will be equipped with lightweight pollution monitoring sensors in order to measure levels of nitrogen dioxide and ozone. The backpacks will then send the information to Twitter. I loved this story. If you're in London, you can go to pigeonairpatrol.com to find out if there's a pigeon near you, and you can check how toxic your air is. You can also sign up to be a beta tester, and you can wear one of those sensors like the pigeon is wearing, and then you can tell what the pollution is in your area. Nate, how do you feel about pigeons with backpacks?
I think
Tweeting.
This is like the best marketing like stunt, and it's like an amazing way to get attention to Plume Labs and to get people talking about Plume Labs and their technology. On top of it, it's just kind of a fun idea of like pigeons like flying around with backpacks. I just think that's really, really cool. It's only 3 days, so you know how meaningful of a study it can be in 3 days is interesting. But you know, really, these sorts of sensors, if they're embedded into other things, at some point, they can backpack onto the back of a delivery drone or something ridiculous in the future. That might be interesting. I'd really like to know what the difference would be between us wearing one of those and a pigeon up in the air. I mean, if they get a different reading because they're higher in the sky or something like that. But it's just such a fun story. And, if nothing else, this company's design chops with the video and the graphics and everything that they're doing, I mean, it's really an impressive, visual marketing campaign here.
Yeah, I mean, putting the pigeons to work. I think that's what we all want.
That's all we ever ask for is how do we put the pigeons to work?
Well, the sensor and the tracking aspect of it is interesting because, we talk about activity trackers and, just location trackers. All of the tracking is just for our own benefit. Like, are we exercising enough? I mean, health is important, but just the idea that it could also track things like air pollution is interesting.
Mm-hmm. And they can deliver messages for us.
Well, they are delivering. Yes, that's part of the whole. It's true. It's
they're
a brilliant
becoming
marketing.
very good at delivering messages for us.
A brilliant marketing technique, which I completely fell for. And it's not a hoax. You could see the pigeons. They're really wearing the backpacks.
Pigeons actually exist. You're right.
All right. Nate, thank you so much again for joining us. Nate Olivarez-Giles is at the Wall Street Journal, Nate OG on Twitter. We talked about your article about enterprise laptops versus phones and iPads. And there's other things that you are working on that you can't tell us about.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a good time. And we should follow up once all these VR headsets are out and see who got sick and who likes what. Because I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be testing them all and looking forward to it. So.
Oh, I'm down. I'll go ahead and write myself a note on that because yes.
Yes.
I plan on using them all.
Let's make that happen.
Right.
I am as stoked about VR as you are, and we should definitely follow up. So.
Excellent.
And if you want more, Nate, if you guys haven't watched Twit, you were on Twit on Sunday, just 2 days ago, and you can download that and watch that as well. You guys talked about all of the news from last week, too.
Yep.
Thank you, Nate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Tomorrow's guest will be Roberto Baldwin from Engadget. TNT records live every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv, or you can leave us a short voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. You can find us on Twitter. We are at Tech News Today TV.
If you want to get our show first before anyone else, you got to subscribe to it. You can find all the ways to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. And like we said before, you can find those board game recommendations at Facebook. Our Facebook page is Tech News Today, just Tech News Today, nothing else. It was passed over by a fan who had that, and they gave it to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I won't try to pronounce your name again because I pronounced it yesterday probably wrong. But thank you for giving it back to us. And if you want to tweet at me, I am at Megan Morrone.
And I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, Kerkol, and all the folks who help us produce this show every single day. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Whoop, pow.